Welcome to the Modern CPA Success Show, where we're 100% focused on helping accounting firms achieve success. If you're an accounting firm owner who wants to learn how to grow your firm by providing virtual CFO services, then this podcast is for you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's podcast. Today, we are going to talk about a tool that we've been using fairly recently that we're having pretty good success with in terms of our review and how it's adding to our financial statement review. So we're really excited to talk about Autoreview. We have Adam Hale here, as always. And today we are joined by one of our superstar seniors, Alyssa Colf. And so, Alyssa, before we go into Autoreview, do you want to give a little bit about your background and kind of how long you've been working with Summit and how you're enjoying it?
Yeah, sure. Hi. I've been with Summit for about 5 years now. I came into Summit without any accounting experience, but I have since gotten all of the requirements down to get my CPA. I am almost there, so I've really learned a lot here, and I'm a senior accountant now.
Awesome. So how much left? I know you've passed 3, right? So are you almost taking the 4th one, or are you waiting for the results on the 4th one?
I take it on Saturday, so.
Wow. So this is the perfect time to record a podcast. Then you could be studying right now instead you're sitting here talking to us.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a nice break. So
yeah,
good luck.
Yeah, so the nice thing about Alyssa, like she said, she's been here 5 years now, and Alyssa is one of our high quality seniors. You know, both Adam and I have her on a couple of our accounts, and whenever I work with Alyssa, I know that the accuracy is always going to be there. So Alyssa and I work on an account together, and I review it ahead of time, and I've never asked her a question that she doesn't know the answer to, which is not always the case for seniors, especially when they're first starting out. And so with Alyssa's skill set, one of the things we do is anytime we're thinking about trying out a new tool, she's one of the first people I reach out to and say, hey, Alyssa, we've heard about this Autoreview thing. Tell us what you think. So Alyssa, why don't you talk a little bit about those first stages with Autoreview and kind of what our first impressions were when we did that first call with them?
Yeah, well, I always go in with a little skepticism, just because, there's a lot of tools out there, and they can, be good and great, or they can, flop and not really do much. But I did see some value in the Autoreview demo that they gave us. It definitely had features that you can't get just out of QuickBooks, and it is in an easy to read, self-organizing format, so you don't have to really put a lot of effort into doing the analysis, because it's putting it all together and spitting it out in a format that is pretty much foolproof if you just follow the steps and click along. It pretty much allows anyone to be able to do this kind of high-level review that we would expect, all of our seniors to be able to do right out of the bat, and it should allow them to do it a little more easily with less experience.
Great. I know that was one of the first questions that we had, because when we went through the demo originally, we knew there was a QuickBooks Online has a tool that you could do some review with as well. But one of the questions we had was, okay, how is Autoreview better than that? Do you want to dig into a little bit some of the features that are there that the QuickBooks Online tool just doesn't have right out of the gates?
Yeah, it's a lot of reporting that organizes the data in a way that QuickBooks doesn't, and it pulls things out and also allows you to make changes in QuickBooks in like a bulk editing format that you can't actually do in QuickBooks. So seeing trends and analysis, those kinds of reports, that it's all just based on the data. So it pulls that data out, organizes it in a way that you can actually see some trends, and that's just things that you would have to look in QuickBooks at high level P&L and just have an eye for calling out what might be a problem. But in Autoreview, you can configure those reports to specifically call out anything that you know might be a problem in this kind of account or for these kinds of transactions, and so it just automatically does that for you. And it's just the tool that allows you to configure those kinds of reports more specifically than you can in QuickBooks.
Yeah, I think this will come to a surprise to both of you, but I have no idea what you're talking about. So I'm going to ask a lot of questions because I've never used Autoreview. I think I've seen it once, maybe hard to remember. So I think one of the biggest things, I hear what you're saying, Alyssa, about the trends, and that's cool. I think one of the things that hits our clients a lot that is frustrating sometimes, and sometimes it's their fault if they're coding their own transactions via like an Expensify or themselves. But at the end of the month, you're going through the financials and the client's like, oh, what's in there? And you double click and you show them the detail. And they're like, oh, cool. You go to another account. They're like, wait a minute. How come that's showing up in 2 different accounts or 3 different accounts? That same vendor, which is sometimes frustrating. It's a software expense and showing up in software, technology, and computer expenses, like all 3 of them. One, you have to question, why do I have 3 of those expenses that all sound like the same thing? But also, why did they show up in 3 different spots? And so does it help with also identifying where a vendor is showing up in multiple spots
Yes, it
easily?
absolutely does. That's a huge part of their reporting, is focusing in on those kinds of misclassifications. And so you can filter the reports by vendor, you can filter it by class, and then have the sub items be like the different classes that are showing up for that vendor and where it went month by month. So if one month it was going to the income account, but the next month it was going to the write-off account, why, it will show you why, or which months where it went each month, and you can determine if it was a misclassification or not. But it'll also like flag when it sees a one-off in 1 month, it'll flag that for your attention.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask, because that's a different question. So, no, I don't want to filter anything, and no, I don't want to look at anything. You know what I mean? Typically, whenever I'm doing the review, I want to be able to, like, the only way that I can usually see that from 10,000 feet is drilling in and seeing the year-to-date information and going to the next one and then remembering I saw that vendor somewhere. So if you were saying, hey, like, go through my 965 vendors and click into each one of them, and do that kind of analysis, that would take forever. But what you're saying is it'll always flag that anything that in the current month that showed up in a previous account the month before, it'll flag that in a separate area for you?
Yep, it's got the main
Cool.
report will show you all the actual ones that just have flags, just the issues. Then you can also expand it to see all of the vendors if you want to review and do a thorough review of the whole GL.
I think the important thing here is just say, again, especially for Adam's references, let's talk a little bit about the format. And again, I'm going to speak from my memory, which was definitely during the sales pitch, and I've seen it a couple times since then in rolling it out. But really, what Autoreview has is, let's just say, 40 categories. And maybe it's more, maybe it's less, but there's 40 different categories of things you can review. You can review by size, you can review by number of transactions, things that would cause a flag, and you can identify what those are. Okay, I want to look at all transactions over $10,000. That would be one category. I want to look at any vendor that is in different expense accounts this month. You basically have those all across, all along the left, and those would be the categories you'd select. So for some clients, you may be using all 40. For some clients, some of those things don't make sense. Okay, why are we going to look at this category, whatever this category is? We're not going to do that one. So this client only has 19 categories that we're looking at. And so that is how Autoreview works, is you go through, and when you first get a client, you're tailoring them and saying, okay, these are the categories we're going to use. These are the size amounts that we care about. These are the transactions we care about. These are the really important vendors that we care about. And you kind of identify those during onboarding with the client. Am I speaking about that right, Alyssa?
Yep, that's exactly it. All the reports, you kind of say, I want to start my review for this time period, and it'll pull up all those reports and mark off the ones that don't have any issues. And then for all the rest, you just click through each report along the left, and it'll flag the things that have issues. Click through, configure, make sure that it's like exactly how you want those things to be appearing. If it's okay, you can say that's okay, and it'll automatically configure the report so it doesn't keep coming up. Or if it's an issue, you can click right into it and change it right there in Autoreview and correct it. and then it'll be correct in QuickBooks going forward.
So it does
And you
sync
just-
automatically to QuickBooks. So if you make the correction in Autoreview, QuickBooks is fixed immediately.
Yep. So
So it's like using the accountant's tool inside of QBO. And now, does this only work for QBO or does it work for desktop, Zero,
it's only for
other
QBO,
stuff? Or...
and it is sort of similar to that. It just has some more capabilities, some different features than that accountant's tool in QuickBooks.
Okay. So I guess the other thing is then, I hear what you're saying for like expense variances and things that are weird. How does it work for the balance sheet?
Mainly just checking if there is accounts that are rarely used, accounts that should not have a negative balance or should have a negative balance. For capitalization, if you set a threshold, if something gets put in an asset account under 2,500, it'll flag that to you and say, hey, that needs to go to the expense, and you can configure that to be whatever amount your company policy is. And then if something gets put in office expenses that's over 2,500, it'll flag that on a different report and say, hey, that needs to be capitalized. And then same for like all of your recurring depreciation entries or recurring prepaid entries. If that entry suddenly falls off, it'll flag that and say, hey, you're missing this entry. So that's just some examples of like how the balance sheet gets pulled in, but it's really all combined into just a reporting structure. It's not split out between P&L and balance sheet so much. It also has an undeposited funds reconciliation that I found really helpful, because sometimes that account could get out of control of they've got some automatic things going into there. But you're able to click into that and it'll show you exactly what transactions have not been deposited yet, and then as of a certain date, what transactions make up the balance on that date and whether or not those things were deposited on a later date. So that's been pretty helpful for me.
Does it have a bill.com one?
No, unfortunately, but that is the same kind
Okay.
of account that does have those kinds of problems. But no, it's just for undeposited funds right now, but it does have unreconciled entries. So if there's anything that's unreconciled anywhere on the balance sheet, it can pop up those accounts. So if you do a reconciliation of those things hitting like the other side, then it'll show them that they didn't clear.
I don't know if I'm following that one. So you would say like, hey, these are my bank accounts. Show me by bank account what my unreconciled items are. I'm like, can't even pronounce that. That's what it's. That's what. Okay.
Yeah.
So because that's an important review that we talk about all the time. Even though we reconcile bank accounts on a weekly basis, and even if you're doing it monthly, many times the person doing the reconciliation is too busy clicking off stuff that cleared, and they're not paying attention to the things that did not clear. And so once you go through that reconciliation, it's always best practice to go back in there, type in the same balance, type in the same date, and review uncleared deposits, checks, all those kind of things. You're saying this has a specific report by bank account that'll show you all those things?
Yep, it is a consolidated report that shows for every single bank account if there is any unreconciled transactions hitting that account. So instead of going into the reconciliation screen for each and every one and clicking in, doing a false reconciliation for every one, you can see all those transactions for the whole balance sheet in one place.
But it has it broke out by bank account, so you know which account it's in. Okay, and does it do the same thing for
Yep.
credit cards?
It's all on the same report.
Okay. Okay. And then what about AP and AR? Does it do anything for AP or AR?
It does have negative balance. So if a specific vendor or a specific client has a negative balance, it flags all of those in a report, which would mean like the bill got deleted but the payment was still there, or there was an overpayment or something like that. It'll consolidate those onto a report and list that.
And it does have like some of the standard reports that you'd get in QuickBooks Online, like where it has like an AP aging and AR aging if you decide to check that on, which again, I know you can get in
Mhm.
QuickBooks, but the nice thing is it's all in one place here. So what I like about Autoreview and what I liked about it from the beginning is it allows someone like Alyssa, who obviously from listening to her for the last 10 minutes knows her stuff, it allows her to easily train either a brand new accountant or if you're offshoring your accounting work, easily train people that might not know as much as Alyssa to look at the books the same way she does. And that's what I really like about it is Alyssa can go in and say, okay, I know these books. I've been doing them for 2 years now. I really know what to look for. I'm going to create a review program in Autoreview that's going to make someone else look at these books the same way I do. And the nice part about it as well is there's a little bit of an audit trail there too. Can Alyssa, you want to kind of talk about how a person that you assign this to would review it and how they would, communicate back to you as well as, let you know what areas you needed to look into.
Yeah, exactly. So ideally, what we'd have is a situation where my bookkeeper's doing all of the coding, they're doing all of the bookkeeping in the account. Then at the end of the month, they go into auto review and start their review. And auto review will track their progress as they go along and click through the reports. And they have the capability to flag certain reports and certain transactions that they have a problem with. So if they feel like they can't fix it themselves, they can flag it in auto review, and then when they finish their review, they'll sign off on it, and it'll have an audit trail, like you said, of who signed off on each month. And then I can go back into auto review, see all of their flags, and see when they signed off on it, and go in and fix the things that they couldn't address themselves. They can make notes and that kind of thing for me, so then I can go in and review their work. So it's like they're reviewing their own work, and then I'm reviewing their work and then fix anything that they couldn't handle on their own.
How's it work with customer interaction? Do you then just take that report and push it out to the client? Like if you have questions about, hey, here's your own client, because oftentimes that's what it is. It's like, hey, Alyssa just wanted to give you a heads up, like what's up with these 12 transactions that didn't clear last, from 5 months ago. Are you able just to push a button and email it to a client, or
Well,
how
you
does
can
that work?
export all of the reports like into a PDF or Excel format. So that's probably what I would do. Currently, I've just been using it internally. I haven't like pushed it directly to clients. It would just bring anything to my attention that I needed to fix, and if there was a specific thing that I couldn't resolve on my own, then I would reach out to the client just directly. But yeah, you can export the report itself to show all the transactions that are showing up as problematic.
Each individual report on its own. Okay, and then what about like work paper integration? Is there anything with that? Like, so if you had a schedule of prepaid insurance or something of that nature, is there a place for that to be stored or linked inside of Auto Review, or is that just a totally separate deal?
Not that I'm aware of. No, that's
Okay,
a good
so
question. I don't know. Maybe they can do that. Um,
we're on our own. Well, we got a couple suggestions for them. Clean up that stupid Bill.com bank account that shows up on everybody's
Yep.
balance sheet, please. I was fooled for years, people telling me that was a timing difference. For anybody listening, it's not a timing difference. It's a problem. Fix it. And then also, if it could link into some work papers or something so that you'd have, again, I mean, I think the cool thing is too there with QBO, what's obnoxious is creating tabs. So every time you want to, I was always a big fan of desktop because you could have that open Windows screen and you could just click through the 40 different windows and leave them all open. I'm a big fan of, I probably have 40 windows open on my screen right now. So, but the problem with QBO is whenever you open those, then some of them time out, some of them don't. And if you forget to do it, now you've moved off your report. But what you're saying is you can still leave QBO open. And this is a really nice place where you still have that kind of open Windows tab. So, so that's really cool.
Yeah, it's really convenient that you can make all your changes in auto review without even having to go back into QuickBooks. Or you can hit the little I button in auto review that automatically opens a tab in QuickBooks and opens that transaction that you're wanting to look at in QuickBooks. So if you wanted to look at it in there too, you could.
Oh, that's interesting because I know sometimes like clearing the AR and the AP can be a little bit more problematic. So, I mean, I know. I mean, that's cool if they have a solution for it inside of Autoreview, but sometimes that requires a little detangling for different stuff. So
Yeah, just a matter of getting everything straightened out.
Are you interested in offering virtual CFO services at your firm or scaling your existing service offerings? The Virtual CFO Playbook, How to Land $60,000 a Year Clients and Provide a Killer Client Experience, is an online series of modules that will equip you with essential tools for creating and delivering scalable VCFO services. These approaches have helped Summit CPA grow from $500,000 to upwards of $5 million in revenue over the past decade. If you're ready to grow your firm, visit summitcpa.net/VCFO Playbook to enroll now.
So we've talked through a lot of the reports here and kind of in general terms. Are there any special reports that you've used in the past 6 months or so that you'd say have really either increased your time or made you a more efficient reviewer that we haven't talked about yet?
There is entries without name. That saved me a whole lot of time one day because I was bringing a client onboarding into Cashflow Tool, which in order to properly forecast all of your expenses, all your expenses in the past have to have a name tied to them so that it can pick up on what the forecast should be going forward based on historical trends. And the client was not coding anything with a name. So I had to go in and I could easily see in Autoreview all of the transactions that did not have a name. I could see the memos listed out so I knew who it was for because it was in the memo right there, and like it sorted it by account. So, all of the same vendor was in this account and I could just sort it by memo, click off all the transactions, and then batch edit the name, which is a feature you can't do in QuickBooks. You can't batch edit the names. You can only edit the account and the class. So that saved me like hours because I was able to just click through all of those transactions for like the last, 6 months and apply a name, get it pushed through to QuickBooks, and then pushed into the forecasting tool. So that'll be super helpful for going forward of just a quick review, make sure all the transactions have a name every week so that it's coming through correctly.
Before, again, I'll give you more chances to give more examples, but I think you brought up a pretty good point there. I talked about the setup during onboarding where, okay, we got a new client, we're going to set up onboarding for transaction amount and all of those initial setups. But you mentioned as well using it for kind of an initial review of taking on a new account. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Okay, it's a brand new client. They've been in operations for the last 10 years and you're just starting to work with them. How have you used Autoreview to get that first look at that client?
Yeah, I just helped another senior accountant set up Autoreview for the first time on a new onboarding client for us, and the we were going through like the GL misclassifications report, and I was like, oh, they coded that wrong. Oh, you better fix that. Oh, gonna need to fix that, at least for the current year, historical years, you're not gonna go back. But if you want to have clean books, if we're going to be presenting the financials, we want to make sure that at least this year is something that we can reference off of accurately compared to how it's going to be going forward. So we were able to clean up a lot of things for that client, just bringing them into Autoreview and like noticing those trends and everything that, because the client was doing their own bookkeeping before, obviously they're not professionals, so not going to be as clean as we would do it. So we caught a lot of things that way.
I think whenever you were talking about onboarding, Jamie, what I was thinking about, and I thought where you were going with it, was templates. So, so are all of these, Alyssa, just like custom? So if I get a new client, I have to do that, or do we have like a Summit template where you can just go ahead and lay it over a new client without having to do a bunch of customization?
Oh yeah, all you have to do is import the QuickBooks file and it'll automatically fill out all of these reports, and it has some custom reports for Summit that it sets up automatically. The where you need to go in and configure is just if this client uses a different name for uncategorized expense or something like that. If you're going through and like, well, they don't really use that account that way, then we have to, configure it for those things. If they have specific threshold limits for capitalization or something like that, go in and change those amounts. But I set it up for this brand new client in about 30 minutes, going through configuring the things that I needed to. And yeah, we had it cleaned up and ready to go in about 30 minutes. So it's doesn't take too long to bring in a new client, set it up.
Does it give you an audit report of the changes that you made, that you pushed through? So for instance, if you made a bunch of changes to the client's books, year to date, and they're like, oh, hey, these are all misclassified, I can push these around and these need to go over here. Is that something that you can kind of show off or tell the client about later? Like say, hey, here's the audit report.
I don't know if it does. The audit trail that it has is who signed off on what and whether they flagged things or not. I don't know. I don't think it does give you a report of the changes actually made in QuickBooks through Autoreview. I don't think it does.
There's just
Suggestion
three.
There you go.
We're adding them up here.
Yep. Send this over to them.
I guess to that point, I mean, how has the customer service been? I know when we first met with them, they were fairly small, and we really liked that about them. Has the customer service been pretty good, and they've been open to our recommendations of changes?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The co-founder actually just did a second training call with our bookkeepers and some of our senior accountants, just because we realized that we hadn't recorded the first one, and we're like, hey, we've got a bunch of new people who need to learn about this. Can you come give us a training call? And the co-founder came in and did a training call, and then he also showed us a bunch of new features that we had requested that they just implemented, and so they are definitely quick on responding to requests for support or changes.
Which is always something we look for in our vendors. I mean, I think we've had on this podcast, we've probably had 10 or more vendors come on or talked about 10 or more vendors, and you probably hear that same story over and over again. Like a lot of the vendors we work with tell us that in the sales process is that, we're a big fish for them. We're a really important client for them, and they're going to work with us, especially Adam always talks about when we work with Jake. Like Jake is always really good at that stuff, and a lot of our companies want to hire Jake away from us because he's so good at thinking of those type of problems and those types of solutions. So a lot of the vendors we do work with do have that capability up front, and they say, hey, yeah, we want your help. We want you to help make this tool better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've been really good about that so far.
Great. So any other, again, we're getting close on time here, but I want to make sure we talk through all the really cool features, and then at the end we'll ask Adam if we've sold them on Autoreview now that we've been using it for almost a year. But that's the final question. But any other cool reports or features that we need to talk about, Alyssa?
Well, one cool feature that they just rolled out is the Chrome extension, which it is a Chrome extension, but what it does is enables a feature within QuickBooks Online that pops up while you're in QuickBooks if it is flagging transactions that might need attention. It shows that whole list of those transactions in this little menu bar up at the top of your QuickBooks screen. And while you're actually coding transactions or reviewing profit and loss or balance sheet accounts, it will flag things right there on your screen in QuickBooks and give instructions on coding and that kind of thing based on historical. So that could be really cool once we get that implemented, because it just rolled out last week. So I've started using it on my QuickBooks, and I think it's going to be a really beneficial feature, particularly for our bookkeepers who are coding our transactions every week. They can have that direct guidance right immediately instead of waiting till the end of the month to fix it.
So let me make sure I understand this one. So if I'm encoding something and I'm looking at a vendor, and that vendor for the last 3 months has been coded to the web services account, and I'm about ready to code it to a computer equipment account, it would code that up as this could be a potential error that you're going to see, and it would identify what type of error it is and what I should be looking for.
Yep. It'll automatically pop up as a flagged item on that list, and it'll give guidance on what it has been coded to historically instead.
That does sound interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Adam, it's your turn. What are you thinking? Do we make a good choice here? Is there more things we need to do in order to keep using this product?
Well, obviously there's some suggestions that need to be made. But overall, yes, it sounds terrific. And it's just kind of a bummer that it only works for QBO. I mean, that's the vast majority of our clients. So I guess from that standpoint, that's fine. But it'd be nice if it integrated with a, desktop specifically. And then, even like Xero would be cool. But I think Xero's got its own kind of tool for that stuff too. So. But no, very cool. Glad to hear the efficiencies that it's creating. Well, and then again, like I said, if you could figure out a way to enhance the client interaction with some of that review too, that'd be really good.
Yeah, I would definitely say, we just did a CPE on this, and some of the questions that came through were, have you tried this tool? Have you tried this tool? So we know Autoreview isn't the only tool out there that does this. So if you're a Xero shop, or if you're a company that uses QuickBooks Desktop a lot more than QuickBooks Online, I definitely see a benefit in a tool like Autoreview. And I think that the biggest thing, like I said, is it's you're gonna within your company, you're gonna have the superstars. You're gonna have people that have been there a while and really know how to do things. But to me, the benefit here is that it's a really quick and easy way to get everybody in your firm to be reviewing for consistency, similar things. It's really easy to have. A while ago, I'd have 3 or 4 different accountants working for me, and everyone would really cling to different things and have different questions, which was good. But to have that consistency across the board has been the nice thing with Autoreview. Is I think that everybody's looking at a similar schedule and a similar plan when it comes to how to review the financial statements, which is the consistency we're looking for when we're doing over 100 sets of clients' books. Any other recommendations, Alyssa, for anybody that's thinking about adding a product like Autoreview and benefits that they'd get out of it?
No, I think we covered everything. I think just the key thing that I'm hoping to get out of it, or at least for my bookkeeper, is empowering them to review their own work and catch things before I have to catch it. Catching an error in front of the client is never fun. So hopefully giving that extra layer of review is empowering them to make the correction on their own before it gets to me or gets to the client.
Yeah, and I can definitely tell you from working with Alyssa that I used to be a little cautious about asking that question that I didn't know the answer to in front of the client. But with Alyssa now, especially now at Autoreview, I'm never afraid to ask that question of, why did their expense, their payroll expense go up by this amount? Because Alyssa always knows the answer, and I think this is a big part of it is because she has someone else doing the majority of the review, the first level of review, so she can really focus on the larger items.
Yep.
How about you, Adam? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. No, like I said, great product, and always looking for ways to be able to extract that data and be able to call those things out for the client and make the review process easier. So no, you sold me.
Awesome.
We're good.
Well, thanks, Alyssa, for bringing all your knowledge, and I know I can tell just from talking to you that you've really figured this product out and appreciate all the work you've put into it.
Yeah, great, no problem.
Enjoy this podcast? Visit our website at summitcpa.net to get more tips and strategies for achieving modern CPA firm success. We're here to be a resource in this ever-changing industry.